Thank you, Madam Speaker. It is a great privilege and an honour, as always, to rise on behalf of the people of Elgin St. Thomas, London South, and I will be sharing my time with the honourable member from York Centre. When I was first elected, I was shocked at how quickly crime became the issue I had to contend with as a Member of Parliament, because it was the significant issue that galvanized the community of St. Thomas this summer in many respects. There was a rather historic building. It happened to have been my campaign office in the previous election, 140 some odd years old, and it was burned down by a serial arsonist out on bail. This was a symbol of a problem that Canadians have seen in communities large and small across the country, which is rampant repeat offenders, unleashing what police have called chronic criminality, prolific offending, onto the streets. And if you talk to any police service across the country, as I have with the police chiefs in my riding and others through my work on the Justice Committee, you will hear that a small number of offenders, sometimes 100 people, maybe even fewer, are responsible for 80 to 90% of the calls that police must respond to. A small group of prolific offenders taxing communities, taxing and straining police resources, and yes, terrifying and terrorizing communities, making it so people do not feel safe walking streets they once could comfortably and safely and freely walk down at any hour of the day or night. People that don't feel comfortable letting their children go out to a mall. People that are forced to take other forms of transportation because they don't feel safe on public transit. Just this morning, I saw that in London, Ontario, they are promoting police officers being on public transit. And I'm grateful to the brave men and women in the London Police Service, the St. Thomas Police Service, the Aylmer Police Service, and the Ontario Provincial Police that are forced to deal with this. But they have had to deal with a problem that has by and large been a consequence of federal government policy. We have heard testimony for several weeks now from police associations, police chiefs, victims' rights groups, and almost all of them have pointed to directly Bill C-75. This was legislation from the Liberal government, which, among other changes, codified something called the principle of restraint, a provision of the criminal code that made it easier for repeat offenders to get out on bail under conditions that are very lax. And why I bring this up is because for months, when we've been raising these issues in this House, the government has said, don't worry, bail reform is coming, bail legislation is coming. And this was not a significant priority to the extent that other bills were. We saw Bill C-9, which was actually the first priority as far as justice legislation goes of this government. That was coming out and tabled in this House weeks before bail legislation was. And now we see Bill C-14, and I will say first and foremost that I am grateful the Liberal government recognizes that there is a crisis unfolding in our criminal justice system. I'm grateful that the Liberal government has finally responded to the calls from law enforcement, from municipal governments, from victims' rights groups, from ordinary citizens, and yes, from Conservative members of Parliament, that action is needed. Now, what they have delivered falls short on some very key areas. And the reason I think this is important is because they said that they needed time because they wanted to get it right. They needed time because they wanted to cover all the bases. We had before the Justice Committee on Tuesday, Madam Speaker, the Commissioner of the Ontario Provincial Police, Thomas Carrick, a very decorated officer. He's also the president of the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police. And what Commissioner Carrick said is that he was disappointed the legislation didn't tackle sentencing in a meaningful way. It was supposed to tackle bail and sentencing, and it has, with the exception of beefing up the penalty for contempt of court, not really touched sentencing head on when we're talking about the sentences for violent offenses. So that is a key shortcoming of this bill. And on the principle of restraint, we also have another key issue here, Madam Speaker, which is that the bill offers, I'll read it precisely, the following language. On the principle of restraint, for greater certainty, Section 493.1 does not require the accused to be released. So they're basically giving a little asterisk for judges and police officers to tell them, don't worry, this principle in the criminal code that says you must release people at the earliest opportunity under the least onerous conditions, it doesn't mean you have to release them at all. Well, everyone knows that, Madam Speaker. No matter how critical you are of the justice system, you know that 100% of people do not get bail, although the Liberals have certainly tried to get to as close to that figure as possible, it seems. But this is a clarifying note. This is not a meaningful change. They're just saying, no, 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 this doesn't mean what you think it does. This section doesn't mean what police have been saying it has done to them, what attorneys have been saying it has done to the justice system. And they have made, to be fair, some acknowledgement that there is a problem when they expand reverse onus. This is something that I welcome. But when this bill goes before committee, I think it is incumbent on the Liberal government to accept the very significant ways in which Conservatives have already proposed in this House measures that would be genuinely and seriously tough on crime, that would provide real solutions and real resolutions, concrete reforms to fix the Liberal bail system. For example, the principle of restraint needs to first and foremost be a principle that puts public safety as its primary obligation, not the rights of the accused, but the right of the public to feel safe and secure in their own communities. This is something that is very important, and again, this is a direct response to months and months of consultation by Conservative members to law enforcement officials who have said they have actually felt ignored by this government, who have said morale has taken a massive hit because officers feel it's not even worth arresting people knowing that under this law that is on the books right now, they're just going to be released. And for years, the Liberal government, when we've sounded the alarm about this, has said, this is not really an issue. They have attempted to gaslight Canadians into thinking the problem isn't as bad as it is. Which makes me ask the question about C-14, why now? Are the Liberals finally acknowledging that they got it wrong with C-75? That they got it wrong with C-48, that they got it wrong with C-5. With each of these bills, there has been a trend, which is that some members of law enforcement will look at it and say, you know what, this looks like it has some good things in it. But years later, when they see the application of it, they turn around and realize that this didn't actually deliver. It didn't deliver on the promises. It didn't deliver on what the government said it would. And that is, of course, a concern that I have on C-14, as I would on any legislation. We need to make sure these aren't just things that exist on paper, but do not translate into the real world. We have given the government the answers. We have provided 3 pieces of legislation in this House already. Well, they were still trying to figure out where they wanted to go with Bill C-14. My colleague from Oxford introduced the Jail Not Bail Act, Bill C-242. This would put front and center the role of public safety when we're talking about bail. It would also prohibit one from serving as a surety to help other people, other accused offenders, get out on bail if they themselves have been convicted of a criminal offense within the last 10 years. Reform of the surety system does not appear at all in Bill C-14, another shortcoming identified already by witnesses testifying before the Justice Committee on our bail study. We also have from my colleague from Lethbridge, Bill C-246, which would put consecutive sentences in place for sexual offenders. Heinous criminals who have been convicted, they should be serving their sentences consecutively. Again, a proposal we offer to the government. Please, Madam Speaker, tell them, I can't tell them directly, but through you, tell them to take our idea. Put this in law if they are serious about these measures. And my colleague from Kamloops, Thompson Nicola, Bill C-225, which would create new offenses pertaining to intimate partner violence. Provisions that Jennifer Dunn of the London Abused Women's Centre told the Justice Committee yesterday she would encourage the House of Commons to pass to protect women. To protect women. Victims are being failed by the justice system as it is now. And Ms. Dunn said in her testimony that many of the women she sees do not even refer to the justice system as the justice system anymore. So I am committed to working with the government if they are serious about wanting to reform and genuinely fix their problems. But they need to acknowledge their role in creating these problems. They need to acknowledge what law enforcement have been saying, which is that so much of what we're dealing with on the streets now that has led to C-14 is a consequence of Liberal laws, notably C-75. So I am committing to the people of Canada, to the people of my riding, and to the members of this House that I will work to beef this up to what it should be in Justice Committee. But Canadians deserve more. Thank you, Madam Speaker.